Coming up on Tech News Weekly, first, Jason Howell and I talked to Heather Kelly of the Washington Post about how ransomware is not just affecting the big guys anymore, it's also affecting everyday people. Then we take a break with our stories of the week. First, Jason Howell goes hands-on with the Pixel Buds A series. There are some changes, some improvements, and a couple steps down from the Pixel Buds. Then I cover some of the stuff you may have missed at Apple's Worldwide Developers Conference before we round things out with Joseph Cox of Vice to talk about how the FBI had to sell Anom as if it was any other cell phone company, a honeypot in disguise. All that and so much more coming up on Tech News Weekly.
Podcasts you love
from people you trust.
This is Twit.
This is Tech News Weekly, episode 187, recorded Thursday, June 10th, 2021. This podcast is supported by AT&T Active Armor. Right now, our lives are on our phones, and with our phones full of live-streamed exercise classes, midday work calls, and nightly family video calls, there's no room for fraud calls. Thankfully, AT&T makes customer security a priority, helping block those pesky calls. It's not complicated. AT&T Active Armor, 24/7 proactive network security and fraud call blocking to help stop threats at no extra charge. Compatible device and service required. Visit att.com/activearmor for details.
And by Nareva. Getting your audio ready for meetings back in the office? Well, Nareva Audio is designed for distancing. It automatically adapts to new room configurations, so you're ready for the new normal and whatever comes next. Learn more at nareva.com/twit.
And by IT Pro TV. Thinking of expanding your IT skills with the certs to prove it? Well, visit itpro.tv/TNW for an additional 30% off all consumer subscriptions for the lifetime of your active subscription when you use the code TNW30 at checkout.
Hello and welcome to Tech News Weekly, the show where every week we talk to and about the people making and breaking the tech news. I am one of your hosts, Mikah Sargent.
And I'm the other one, Jason Howell.
Oh, no, Jason, no.
What?
No
What's
whispering.
wrong? What's wrong, Mikah? You don't want to do the whole show in whispers.
I'm going to put you in touch with any number of voice coaches who tell you that whispering is very bad for your vocal cords.
Oh, okay. That's good to know. All right, fine. Then I'll scream at the top of my lungs for today's episode.
Also very bad for your vocal cords. Well, folks, we have a show, as we typically do when we do this show. We've got a show for you. And today we're talking about something that has been even more, I think, front of mind than it has been in the past. You know, it wasn't too long ago. I was listening to some folks who know a thing or two about security and internet security and kind of protecting yourself online, having a bit of a chuckle, talking about some ransomware attacks that took place recently. And when we hear about ransomware attacks and they affect kind of a body, a big body, and it's sort of detached from us, then it does become easier to kind of identify that as something that, you know, oh, well, you should have done this, or, oh, you shouldn't have fallen into that. And you can kind of fall into the trap of not empathizing with these folks. But it turns out that as more and more ransomware attacks are happening, it is affecting more and more people, and that big body I talked about earlier becomes individual bodies that are affected. Joining us today to talk about this is Heather Kelly from the Washington Post, who has written about how these attacks have affected more than just kind of nebulous bodies. Welcome back to the show, Heather.
Hello. Thanks for having me.
Yes. So let's start by kind of talking about the recent ransomware attacks that you, in fact, in your article, you say as recently as Wednesday, there have been attacks that have, caused problems. Could you kind of go down the list of some of the recent ransomware attacks in case our listeners may not have heard about some of these?
Definitely. So the funny thing about ransomware attacks is they're happening every single day to all kinds of companies, like fashion companies or people who make your orange juice. And a lot of times we don't hear about it unless there's a reason to, unless it's impacted something in people's lives. So the one last Wednesday is that there was a ransomware attack on a company that runs the ferries to and from Martha's Vineyard, which of course impacts people trying to get to Martha's Vineyard. And it pretty much impacted the ticketing system, and there were delays, but the boats could still run. So it was like a minor thing, but it did bring it into people's minds. And the bigger ones are a recent attack against a meat processing company. It's actually the world's largest meat processing company. And there was a fear of there being a meat shortage, but as of now, there's been no meat shortage. There was actually a quote in one of these stories I love that says, "There's plenty of meat in the pipeline," which is a disgusting sentence, and I love it. And so that was one, but some prices went up. Some butchers were like, you know what, we want to be safe, we're going to raise prices on our beef. And then the other one, of course, was the Colonial Pipeline ransomware attack that caused panic buying of gasoline, at least one Hummer explosion, and some misinformed people putting gasoline into plastic bags.
Wow. One Hummer explosion.
Interesting. There could be Hummers,
Yeah, yes. What an interesting casualty list. So let's then talk about ransomware in general. Can you kind of, as you did in the article, describe for someone who may be going, okay, how does this happen and why do they call it ransomware? What is the sort of method by which these things tend to take place? And then can you describe kind of what is involved with ransomware? Why is it called that?
Definitely. And I will do the least technical explanation because that's just the level I also understand it on. So hacker groups it's actually like a business. These aren't just, single criminals, though it sometimes is. It is a large business, and they're selling ransomware as a service. So a company will make a product, and then the hackers will come and buy that product and use it to break into company systems. Once they get there, what they do is they access the company systems through whatever flaws they have, whatever exploits, and they take its data hostage, which is why it's called ransomware. So it could be customer data. It could be that they've completely shut down how that company works, impacting its business. A lot of times on a smaller scale, they'll just take employees' personal data and they'll demand, of course, some kind of money in return, usually a cryptocurrency, so it's less traceable. And what's interesting to me is that it's almost always a little bit negotiable. And so the hackers will put up this countdown clock, like you have, 160 hours to respond to us and tell us what you're going to pay us. And there are professional ransomware negotiators who get involved. And I'm dying for some sort of Netflix show about these people. And they go back and forth and they come up with an amount. Or sometimes these companies are like, you know what, we're not going to pay. We will instead pay our employees to have, identity theft protection. So it could go a lot of different ways. It's happening constantly, but at the heart of it is we've got your data, give us some money.
Yeah, in fact, there have been, it's been an interesting thing as companies are getting more and more connected online. They are adding to kind of their insurance protections. And there have been some insurance payouts to different ransomware groups. And then the federal government in the United States, at least, has sort of warned some of those insurance companies against paying out those payouts because it only results in increasing payouts over time. And so there's this really kind of scary back and forth that's happening there as these ransomware demands are getting higher. And, talking down from 20 million to 14 million is still quite a bit of money for these groups. But one of the things that I really like about this piece is that it does focus on individuals. And it's kind of, for the individual who's reading about this, it's a very frustrating thing to see how some folks are impacted by this, because at least my memory of ransomware attacks kind of in the beginning seemed to be targeted at these groups where it was a little bit, stick it to the man. And less and less it is feeling that way. Could you talk a little bit about the Presbyterian Medical Hospital situation and the University of Vermont Medical Center?
Definitely. So it's funny. Hospitals have been a target of ransomware attacks for a very long time. I asked some experts whether, that was on purpose, if they wanted to cause the most harm. One idea is that if you're a hospital, you kind of have to pay. People's lives are at risk. One of the examples, I believe in Vermont, was that their entire system was shut down and people couldn't get to their chemotherapy appointments. And they could send them to another hospitals, but their records were locked down too. So this other hospital had to start from scratch and find out what this patient needed. And there's all these kinds of delays that you can't really point to at this point a casualty. But, if an ambulance takes an hour instead of 10 minutes because a hospital is down, if it's a heart attack, that could be life and death. So hospitals are very much a target of these things because I think they have to pay out. But it's also moving a little bit away from that, as one person I talked to said, that it's slightly trending down and going towards other industries where there's just a bigger budget to pay out, like, pipelines and power companies.
So what are companies doing to mitigate the threat, if we know? And, what is the kind of uptick in some of these ransomware attacks affecting how much attention is being paid to ransomware? And as I mentioned earlier, the insurance companies, are there more companies that are cropping up saying we specifically deal with ransomware? Has it had an impact kind of on the security industry?
I think actually what I heard, and I'd have to look more into this, is that the insurance companies are actually less willing to insure people because the prices keep going up and people keep having to pay out. And there's just so many more attacks that it might not make financial sense for them to offer that kind of insurance. But yeah, so the government officially says, don't pay out. And then unofficially companies kind of have to if they want to keep doing business. So what happens next is actually, people have been yelling about this for years. This is a problem. But like with hypothetically climate change, it's really hard to make people care about something unless it affects them personally. And now it's affecting people personally. They can see it. It exists. It's not like a boring article they're scrolling by, and they're being a lot louder about it. And so it seems like the perfect time for the government and private industry to actually come up with a set of guidelines of how to protect yourself. One of the experts I spoke to said you need to have incentives for companies to protect themselves, and you need to have guidelines. You can't just say, hey, go spend, a few $1 million on locking down your system, because these companies are probably like, we're good. It's admin 0246 our password. Nobody's going to guess that.
Yeah, that makes sense. So incentives to protect themselves, does that also mean disincentives to not protect themselves? Are we looking at kind of penalties for companies that aren't protecting themselves against ransomware, particularly when we think about, hospitals and industries that make or break the entire United States, kind of like the gas industry?
Yeah, I think we'll, not for all companies. I think most of it's going to be incentives, and here's a budget, and here's some instructions. But yeah, we're looking at private utilities are going to have a lot of pressure on them. They can't not do it. So we might see some regulation on that pretty soon, I hope.
So by your estimation, are we, and of course this is a little bit crystal ball, but are we looking at quite a few more ransomware attacks as the year goes by, or is the kind of sudden crop up of all of these going to kind of result in a slowdown as more attention is being paid to it? Or is this just kind of the start of things, do you think?
I don't think it's going to slow down. I mean, one reason we saw so much this past year, obviously, is we all had to take systems online that weren't online before. We were taking entire schools online. One example that we had was a school that was entirely virtual last year, had a ransomware attack, and it was basically a snow day for 2 days. They just literally couldn't have school because they had no Zoom. So I think the attacks will continue, but maybe they'll just have slightly fewer repercussions because kids can go to school in person, and we won't be as entirely dependent on these little boxes for everything we do in life. But it does seem like the ransomware attackers, especially in these recent 2 cases where the money has been kind of grabbed back by officials, somebody described it as the dog who caught the car and didn't know what to do with it. I think they aimed high and then didn't exactly know what to do when they got there. So we might actually see them smaller targets with fewer resources to track them down.
Got it. All right. Well, Heather Kelly, I want to thank you so much for spending some time here with us today talking about this piece. Of course, folks can find your work over on the Washington Post, including this article. I encourage you all to read. If folks want to follow you online, where can they go to do so?
I am on the Twitters as Heather Kelly, and I had to kill like 5 other Heather Kellys to get that. Please follow me.
I can only imagine.
Well, there you go. Heather Kelly, thank you so much for joining us today. We appreciate it.
Thanks for having me, guys.
Thank you, Heather.
Bye. Alrighty, folks. Up next, a first look at the Pixel Buds A series. But first, Jason, take it away.
This podcast is supported by AT&T Active Armor. Right now, our lives are on our phones, and with our phones full of live-streamed exercise classes, midday work calls, and nightly family video calls, there's no room for fraud calls. Thankfully, AT&T makes customer security a priority, helping block those pesky calls. It's not complicated. AT&T Active Armor. 24/7 proactive network security and fraud call blocking to help stop threats at no extra charge. Compatible device and service required. Visit att.com/activearmor for details. All right. Yesterday, I got a package in the mail, and I was happy to see that I received something that I'm very curious about, because I had the originals, the last version of the Pixel Buds, and I actually have liked them a lot. I'm going to talk about a little bit of the differences here, but I received the Pixel Buds A series earbuds in the mail, true wireless earbuds that I have right here. Haven't even really opened it. Like, I got it and I was like, okay, this is definitely going into TNW for tomorrow. And the thing is, these aren't out yet. They are scheduled to be available for everyone on June 17th. So that's a week from now. And of course, I've got to be smarter than the box as I open these up here. But I'm really curious. Google sent me these to review. And as you can see, they actually sent me kind of the same colorway. They do have a few different color options with the Pixel Buds Series A or A series. But I mean, side by side, the cases look almost identical, save for that little
yeah, they got
bar.
rid of the Stormtrooper look. How could they?
Yeah, I know. Or the panda, however you want to look at it. Like when I pop this open, I actually really like the black and white approach. Now it's like almost stark white by comparison, which actually looks good in and of itself. You can see right now, I open them up. So this is a fast pair that is just amazing, right? Bluetooth pairing can be such a pain in the butt, but Google has this fast pair support. So all I had to do was open it up and it's like, oh, hey, you want to set this up? That's easy, and I could connect it and it just goes
identical.
right into it.
Identical to the experience of pairing AirPods on iPhone. So it's real, like I can empathize there. Absolutely wonderful to be able to pair that way versus the shuffle of trying to go and find where you're supposed to pair.
Totally. Yeah, it's really nice. If things seem slow on my phone, it's because I am running, or it could be because I'm running Android 12 Beta 2 that came out a couple of days ago as well. So there could, it's probably meant to operate a little bit faster than it did, but I could go ahead and set that up. I'm not going to spend my time setting up all the software features. But I did want to kind of run through here real quick, because obviously I just took these out of the box, so I have no actual experience with these yet. I fully intend to do a review, maybe on Hands on Tech. I'm not sure if that'll be on the schedule or if it's just going to be on All About Android, or heck, maybe I'll do it here on TNW. I'm not really quite sure, but expect a review sometime in the future, in the near future, either in the next week or two, on the Pixel Buds A series. And that review will be coming from someone who has used the last generation of Pixel Buds a whole heck of a lot. These are really great. They have some issues, which I'll talk about, and I hope that the A series addresses some of those things. But there's a lot of similarities on paper between these two, and then there are some market differences. First of all, there's the price. The A series is $99, so $99 for buds that look pretty similar, although I'm realizing they're maybe okay, they're pretty darn similar between the two. Maybe a little bit smaller, or
so these are less
quite sure.
expensive. That I didn't.
Yes.
I didn't quite get that. Okay. So is this supposed to be the budget version, or is it the
Yes.
new version?
So this is meant to be a more affordable version. So,
Okay.
but they keep intact a lot of things from the original that are pretty desirable. Obviously, the design is incredibly similar from the case to the earbuds themselves. Bluetooth 5.0, IPX4 certified. This is what's similar between the two. SBS and AAC codec support. So you don't get high res codecs, but on these lower budget earbuds anyways, you often don't get those. Same 6mm drivers inside. Essentially, from my understanding, the sound is pretty much identical between these two. So instead of spending $179 for the originals, which, although, by the way, Best Buy I saw has them on sale right now for $139. You can get the $99 ones that release next week, and you get the same sound. If sound is most important to you, you're set, because I actually think that's one of the strong points of the originals. The sound quality is pretty solid. To my ears, I really like the sound. So if that's similar to the A series, that's a really great thing to have there. Adaptive sound mode is here. That's kind of where it can lower the volume, and it's not quite a pass-through microphone, but it can lower the volume when it knows it needs to. Bass boost, transcription features, which I've never really used, but they are supported. Auto pause when you remove it from your ear, auto play when you put it back in. That's all great. And finally, I think the thing that I love the most about the original is intact here, and that's the full Google Assistant integration, which it's not like we're not used to seeing assistant integration in devices like this. What makes it different is it's total hands-free. And the example that I use that's just so awesome about these compared to any other true wireless earbuds that I've used is if I go out for a jog or I go out for a run, the last thing I want to have to do is like fiddle with either my device in my pocket or even touching the earbuds when I'm running and I'm jogging around and I'm kind of moving. It's hard to get precise on those things. So you might mean to turn up the volume, but you end up pausing the audio instead. Little annoyances like that. With these, I can just say, like as I'm running, I can just say, hey, G, turn down the volume 30%, and it'll do it. And I don't have to touch it. And it's just, once you do that a couple of times, you're like, okay, they should all be capable of this. It's too bad that they're not. So it's a really nice differentiator to the others out there. Now we got the differences. No LED on the earbuds themselves. Let's see here. We've got the LED on the case. I'm sorry, not the earbuds, the case. So, right. So basically you can see at the top here when I remove it out, that's meant to be kind of like an indicator of, let's see, is it gonna, well, it blinked last time and now it's not. Maybe because, there we go. There we go. You see that little LED. That is an indicator tied to the earbuds themselves. You've got a connection, it's charging, or it has battery, or it doesn't. This only has the indicator on the case, which the old version also has. That really just signifies, either charging or the charge of the case itself. The buds themselves, you don't have that LED readout there, so that's missing. You do not have touch controls on the A series at all. So on the original, I can tap and I can swipe up, and it's got a nice kind of gesture motion for volume. It's actually a really smooth operation as far as that's concerned compared to others I've used. On this, it's all voice control. So you're not going to have any sort of hands-on interaction, which, like I said earlier, I actually think Assistant does a really great job with a lot of that anyways. So that doesn't bum me out very much. The internal chipset actually allows on the A series for these to connect individually to the phone. There's no relay between one earbud to the other and then to the phone, which is what the originals do. And it's what a lot of true wireless earbuds do. It's nice to kind of have that direct connection between the buds to the phones themselves. It's just one less area where like sync can fall out or,
Gotcha.
You can have issues there. So it's nice to have that direct connection if you can, and the new version does have that.
Okay, so the more expensive ones do not have that.
Right.
But the less expensive ones have been updated with better pairing with the phone.
Yeah, better connectivity, right? Direct connection while it's actually connected to the device. It's a more direct connection as opposed to routing through one of the earbuds to the other one and then to the phone through a single one, if that makes sense. The case, as similar as they look, the original has wireless charging capability. The new one does not. So you're going to be relegated to plugging in the new the A series to USB-C, although it does support fast charge. So 15 minutes of plugged in charging gives you 3 hours of playback on the case itself. So, like, I don't know about you. I'm sure we've talked about this before. Wireless charging is one of those things that I know most people say once they do it, they can't live without it. And I still, I just kind of don't care. Like, I've tried, and I'm like, I just end up plugging my stuff in. I really do not care about wireless charging. So that doesn't bug me. What about you? Are you like wireless charging diehard?
I'm not a diehard. I just, for the most part, I use wireless charging, but there are some things that I plug in. My AirPods Pro, for example, because I've got this thicker case on it, it gets warmer than I like if I put it on a wireless charger. So instead, I just plug it in. And occasionally, if I need my phone to charge faster, so at night, I'll put it on the wireless charger. But if I need to juice up during the day, I'll typically plug it in. So yeah, it's not such that, I've eliminated all cords or anything like that. I'll still use wired charging when it makes sense and wireless charging when it makes sense.
I suppose if I had a wireless charging pad like in every room of my house, and it was just like this ubiquitous thing throughout my home, I'd probably love it more, because then no matter where I am, instead of setting it on a table, I just set it on a pad and it's charging and it's always charged up and everything. But I don't have that set up, and I guess I haven't explored that, so therefore I don't miss it yet. If that makes sense. And then finally, and I think this is a big one, Google says that the new ones are not going to cut out or lose sync the way the previous version did. They say they included the higher gain antenna in the newer version. There's a lot of complaints. Jeff Jarvis on This Week in Google, I think he ended up going through a couple of versions of the original Pixel Buds wireless earbuds before just giving up on them entirely, because they would cut out. They didn't stay connected to the phone very well. They would lose sync. And I think this also kind of ties in with what I was talking about earlier about them connecting individually to the phone instead of relaying through. So that's less ways for it to get confused and hung up. So that's a biggie for people who experienced the cutouts on the original. It was really frustrating, and they Google rolled out multiple updates to try and address it. Now they're saying these new ones just won't do that. That remains to be seen. I'll play around with them and see what my experience is. Neither of them have active noise cancellation, so that's not something you're going to get on either of these. Nor do they have, like I said, the ambient mode, the kind of like pass-through microphone. You don't have that, but you have the adaptive sound as sort of the replacement there. So that's the Pixel Buds A series in a nutshell. Reviews of these started posting, I don't know, days ago, and like I said, it's available for sale in a week. So on June 17th, you'll be able to buy these for $99. And I don't know, if I play my cards right, I'm going to, use these a bunch, at least over the next week, and talk about it on All About Android next week, so that you all can have, I don't know, an insight, or maybe it'll be my review on TNW. I'm not really quite sure, but so that you can know when it launches, whether it's a worthy upgrade or downgrade, however you want to look at it. It's kind of interesting that some of these features that they upgraded are on the less expensive version, but that's actually kind of nice that Google is doing that instead of saying it's a true downgrade in all facets. So that's the Pixel Buds A series. When it comes to wireless earbuds, what are your main go-tos, your favorites?
AirPods Pro. I've been using them for such a long time that I wasn't really big into the AirPods before AirPods Pro came along. When AirPods Pro came along, the pairing was better, the sound was better, the noise cancellation was better. Well, that was the first round that actually did it. So yeah, everything to do with these. I have had problems with them over time with there's kind of this ongoing issue. I don't have it right now, but a couple of times I had this issue that Apple is aware of where they will replace them. So I have had to have both of them replaced at different times. So they're entirely two new earbuds individually.
Right.
And since then they've been A-okay. But yeah, these are the ones that I'm constantly using. Anytime I'm, popping in or popping on something to listen to outside of shows, these are what I use. During podcasts, I obviously use these ones as people see me use on Tech News Weekly. And then I've got some in-ear monitors that I use mostly for iOS today because I have to have room for the hat for the app cap segment.
Right. Yeah, that's true. That's a consideration. Cool. Well, yeah, so I'm looking forward to it. And I will keep y'all posted on where that review ends up. And I'm excited to dive in. So there you go.
Wash 'em. Well, up next, we've got some things you may have missed if you just watched the WWDC keynote or if you heard about the WWDC keynote later and didn't get a chance to check out some of the other things there. So some little tidbits you may have missed. But first, this episode of Tech News Weekly is brought to you by Nareva. As we think about heading back to the office, we know that the way we meet will change. Distancing can have big implications for meeting room audio and may require changes in room configurations. You need good mic coverage when people are distanced in a meeting space. Nareva makes it possible. Beamforming systems need adjustment, often by an expensive technician. Tabletop systems may require additional mics and would have to be sanitized between meetings. Both may require meeting participants to change behavior, like sitting in a predetermined spot and which direction they face. But what if there was a better way to get clear, reliable audio and let your team act naturally and still feel safe? One analyst called Nareva Audio the first socially distanced mic system. Nareva Audio is designed for distancing. It uses a completely original approach to audio conferencing called microphone mist technology that has 4 patents. The HDL300 system becomes the first microphone and speaker bar to be certified for large meeting spaces up to 15 feet by 28 feet. That's 4.5 by 8.5 meters. It fills a room with thousands of virtual microphones, and the audio automatically adapts to any room configuration. So you get true full room coverage so people can be heard from anywhere in the room, no matter where they sit or where they face or how they're distanced. You don't need to bring in technicians with Nareva Audio. You can install each microphone and speaker bar on the wall yourself. And Nareva Console puts device management into your hands and on your terms. Adjust settings, install firmware updates, check device status, and more, all from a secure cloud-based platform. Console is included with every Nareva Audio system, and when you enroll your system, you'll receive an extra year of warranty absolutely free. Nareva Audio products have won numerous awards, including the Top New Technology Award at ISE 2020 for the Nareva HDL200 system. No matter the size of your room, they have a full line of systems for small, medium, and large spaces. HubSpot is a happy customer. Jimmy Yan, their principal collaboration engineer, says, "We were so impressed with the sound quality, ease of install, and ease of use of the HDL300. It was a no-brainer for us to adopt it." So for you to learn more about how Nareva Audio is the simple and cost-effective way to let your teams distance in meetings and still act and converse naturally, visit nareva.com/twit. That's NUREVA.com/twit. And our thanks to Nareva for sponsoring this week's episode of Tech News Weekly. Okay, folks, so WWDC 2021, Apple's Worldwide Developer Conference, is underway. Wraps up after this week, and on Monday Apple held its keynote, announcing new features, functionality for its different software platforms: iOS, tvOS, watchOS, HomePod OS, Mac OS, et cetera, et cetera. And with that came a whole host of new things for developers to check out as they start to make use of these new tools and prepare their apps for the next version of the different operating systems. And oftentimes, there are things that don't get announced on stage or get very brief attention on stage because the event is long and takes a while. And so you may have missed some things, and I wanted to kind of talk about a few of those. iOS 15 probably got, all told, the biggest set of new features and changes. There's lots of new stuff, including SharePlay for FaceTime, which is a technology to let you experience all sorts of content with other people in FaceTime. So you can watch different movies and TV shows and have everybody kind of be part of the process. So if you have family sharing turned on such that everybody in your family can make use of your subscription to Apple TV Plus, then you could all watch a show together and it's synced on each individual's device so that you're all watching it together at the same time and can comment on it. You can also do this with music. If there's a new song that you really want your friend to check out, you can FaceTime them and say, "Oh my gosh, you've got to hear the song." And then you're listening and you're like, "Oh, the drums are coming up. This is so great." And my favorite,
the drop.
It's the drop. Yeah, get ready for the drop. And my favorite, which is the ability to share your screen. And this is going to be great anytime a friend or a family member has a tech question, where I can show them my screen and walk them through how to fix the issue that they're having with their device. So all of those are probably things that you heard of. Those were some of the big changes. But one of the sort of side features that comes along with this is Apple's focus on audio. And so a while back, it announced that it was going to be bringing lossless audio and spatial audio to the Apple Music library. Many people are familiar with lossless audio. It's trying to essentially provide music in as close to its original format as possible. It is an attempt to give you direct access to the best quality sound that you can get from an artist. And I'm not going to get into the politics there, so to speak, where different people have different opinions on what lossless audio, how well we can actually hear different types of audio and whether lossless audio is a thing that people need to be concerned about, et cetera. But that is one of the features. The other one is the spatial audio. Now, with spatial audio, it is a way to revamp audio that you're listening to such that it puts it in a virtual 3D space around you. So it's like surround sound audio, but it can be created without having to have multiple speakers. As long as you have the right headphones for it, it can do that without you needing to have multiple speakers. So in FaceTime, if you're talking to 3 or 4 different people and you've got your AirPods Pro in or whatever headphones you have that work with this feature, then it will virtualize the placement of the people in the FaceTime call so that it sounds like they're talking from different areas in front of you, which helps to kind of spread out that audio so that everybody's not exactly overlapping in your ears in this virtual space. And it can be kind of hard to grok without actually experiencing it. But what's fascinating to me is how quickly your brain kind of locks on to and creates in your own mind this virtual space. And so as you're listening, then suddenly, Uncle Tony and cousin Leonard and Sister Beatrice all are coming from these different places, and you can kind of see them in your head in those different places. With that, though, is an interesting feature that I just discovered. I believe it was this morning. No, maybe it was yesterday. Yeah, it was yesterday. In iOS 15, Apple has a feature that will let you take stereo audio, and there's a feature that's called spatialize stereo. And so it will attempt to take the stereo audio that's coming from your device, whatever it happens to be, and make it into spatial audio. And so I was watching, it was Wednesday, so I was watching Windows Weekly as I was producing it, and I happened to discover this feature. And so I turned it on, and suddenly his voice seemed like it was coming from right in front of me, and Leo was a little bit to the left, and Mary Jo was a little bit to the right. And so it kind of separated those three voices and put them in different places in this virtual sound system. So to go back to that, the feature that you may have missed was Apple's addition of spatializing stereo, so that it's not just particular songs that have this feature turned on. But at the end of the day, the best experience is going to be a spatial audio track that was designed to sound good. Right. In fact, Apple provides in Apple Music this great little album that is Zane Lowe, who is he's a radio personality, but he's been working for Apple for quite a while now. And he kind of takes you through spatial audio. And he takes a song from Marvin Gaye, plays it for you in mono and talks about it, then plays it for you in stereo and talks about it and talks about the separation there, and then says, now listen to it in spatial. And then he goes in and talks about the little tidbits. And it is quite amazing, actually. As you hear Marvin Gaye it's almost like he's whispering in your ear and the music is behind him. And so it was a really cool experience. Interestingly enough, then he took a modern song, one by The Weeknd, and played that. And it went from stereo, because there was no mono version, it went from stereo to spatial. And I couldn't tell the difference between the two. And it was funny because he's going, listen to the way that the scents play above your head and the bass rattles deep within your chest. And I'm like, I don't hear any of this, Zane Lowe. But the Marvin Gaye song, total difference. And so I think that it's going to depend on the song. It's going to depend on the artist that's creating with it. So that's something to keep in mind. A few other features that we'll quickly touch on. For a while in iOS 14, the date and time picker changed so that you would have to type in the numbers. And in any date and time section, if someone didn't create their own custom UI, then this is how it was. And so in the clock, like if you go to set alarms, you would type in the time. And people didn't like that because there used to be this really fun sort of scroll wheel, and it would like tick, 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 and you would just choose the time that you wanted. And it felt interactive, and it made sense, and it was easier, in my opinion, to change the time versus the one where you typed it in. So Apple brought back that date and time picker to iOS 15. So that's there. Hopefully it'll stay. Of course, iOS 15 is in beta, so it could go away, but my fingers are crossed that it stays. And then what was the other thing? Oh, the last one I'll touch on is Apple TV. If you have an Apple TV and you've been a user for a while, then you know how annoying it is to have to log into every app. And every app seems to have its own way. And sometimes you go to a website /activate and you type in a code, and some work with your television provider and some need you to log in via an app. And Apple is trying to make it easier for individuals and also easier for the developers of the app to create a login system that is just easy to use. And so in iOS or in tvOS 15, or in the next version of tvOS, I should say, there is going to be a feature that will let you use Face ID or Touch ID to log into your Apple TV apps. Now, of course, this requires the developers to make use of it. So we still have to hope that the different ones that are doing all of their own little things right now will. But again, Apple is working to make this simpler so that you can use this feature. And I like that, because anytime I've had to reset up or set up a new Apple TV and have to log into those apps again, sometimes I'm just like, you know what? Actually, I don't care about watching that show right now.
Right.
Because I don't want to go through this.
Yep.
So.
I know that pain. I've felt that pain on the TV many times, even with Android TV. And possibly felt that pain more because I think Apple TV in many ways has been a much better kind of implemented and thought out living room experience than Android TV. But yeah, so just touching real quick on one of the things you talked about with spatial audio, I think what is intriguing to me about what you were talking about when it comes to, you know, the Windows Weekly episode where Paul was in front, Leo was on one side, Mary Jo on the other, is that if you're creating a spatial kind of spread of these voices in real time, which to my understanding, based on what you explained, that's what's happening. There's actually some really interesting things happening there in the sense that, you know, our voices occupy similar frequency spectrums. And so the DSP that is required to analyze the differences between the voices and then faithfully spread them out so that only Mary Jo is over, you know, in this general area and only Leo is over here, even when they're talking over each other, is actually a pretty complicated thing to do. It's not impossible. In the music production world, there have been tools for years now. One of them, God, what is it? Suddenly the name that just dropped out of my, Melodyne. That's what I've used, which allow you to take a single recording, a single audio recording of, let's say, you know, an orchestra, just as an example off the top of my head, like a 3 or 4 person, you know, quartet or something like that. And it could analyze the audio. And even though the frequency spectrums overlap between all of these instruments, it still had enough information there to faithfully pull one and put it over here, pull the other and put it over here. And it's just, it blows my mind that that's even possible because of the crossover that's happening there. How is a computer algorithm able to do that? I don't even know. That's why I don't, you know, make a living doing this stuff. But the fact that they're doing this in the spatial audio implementation inside of iOS 15, that's pretty impressive. If the results are good, like if you don't hear suddenly a phantom Leo appear on the Mary Jo side, you know what I mean?
Right, but, exactly.
Yeah, but yeah, that's really cool.
All right, yeah, I think that covers enough for now. There's a lot more that we could talk about, but you know, that's a good start.
Yeah, excellent. Cool. And then if people want to find all the other stuff about WWDC, I mean, we've been talking about it on the network all week. iOS Today, Mac Break Weekly.
Rosemary Orchard and I will talk about it tomorrow on iOS Today. Mac Break Weekly earlier in the week. I would say that show, but they didn't get to quite a bit of it. They ended up talking about some other things. So,
all right. You never know what you're going to get.
Exactly. iOS Today, tomorrow is going to be your best bet for learning all things WWDC.
Yeah, and definitely Twit this weekend. We have Jason Snell and Renee Ritchie will both be on Twit. So, yes, there's definitely going to be a good amount of WWDC talk happening on Sunday. So there you go. All right, up next, a massive FBI honeypot in the encrypted phone world. It's actually a really fascinating story. So we've got Joseph Cox from Vice joining to talk all about that. But first, this episode of Tech News Weekly is brought to you by IT Pro TV. IT Pro TV is the best online source for IT education. Whether you happen to be just a person, an individual who's interested in starting and expanding your IT skills, or if you belong to an organization that's looking to enhance IT skills throughout the organization. Cybersecurity, obviously, it's one of the most important factors for organizations. It's important all across the board. In today's show alone, we're talking about it in 2 separate interviews. IT leaders should be constantly updating their knowledge and understanding of current industry trends and learning the recent details about cybersecurity as often as possible. And this is exactly why individuals and businesses need to check out IT Pro TV. Whether you happen to be a cybersecurity novice or an expert in the field, IT Pro TV will provide you with the most up-to-date, crucial information and tutorials to follow along with. You can check out their cybersecurity courses like MTA Networking Fundamentals and MTA Security Fundamentals. And actually, you know, it's June 10th. We're a third of the way through June. June happens to be Hacker Month at IT Pro TV. They're going to have a free weekend actually this upcoming weekend with 5 hacking courses, June 12th through 13th. It's going to include EC Council's Certified Ethical Hacker and CompTIA's Pen Test Plus. They'll also have a webinar on June 17th with YouTuber John Hammond on reverse malware, and that'll be available on demand thereafter. IT Pro TV gives you the IT training and certifications that you need to be successful. They have 7 studios, 5,800 hours of IT training already. That number is going up all the time. New content daily, so it's the perfect place to learn and keep up to date. Expanding your IT knowledge in an overall sense. Well, that's what IT Pro TV is all about. You can get certified in Apple, security skills, Python, Cisco, and so many more. They are the official video training partner for CompTIA, so you know you're getting the best IT training around. IT Pro TV also makes it so easy to get a good IT education because you can do it anytime from the comfort of your own home, on your own schedule. IT Pro TV's courses are live, also on demand worldwide. So, you can get these through your Chromecast, your Roku, Apple TV, PC. Of course, they have iOS and Android apps as well. One reviewer actually states, I really like the way IT Pro TV makes you feel like you are right in the room with the teachers. And continues, I also like how I can watch on Roku. Instruction is really clear so you can understand the content, and the teachers are really great. So many things to love about the IT Pro TV approach. And if you're a fan of Twit's technology content, as I'm sure you are, then you're going to feel right at home with IT Pro TV. Go to itpro.tv/TNW. Make sure and use code TNW30 to receive 30% off all consumer subscriptions. Not only that, it tells them that you heard about it through Tech News Weekly. That's itpro.tv/TNW. And use code TNW30 for an additional 30% off for the lifetime of your active subscription. IT Pro TV, build or expand your IT career and enjoy the journey along the way. And we thank IT Pro TV for their continued support. They've been with us forever. It's great to continue to have you guys on board. Thank you, IT Pro TV. All right, I was just speaking about security. Well, more than 800 arrests worldwide are now tied to an FBI operation that Europol called one of the largest and most sophisticated law enforcement operations to date in the fight against encrypted criminal activities. It's a mouthful, but it's also a big deal. Joseph Cox wrote extensively for Vice about Anom. Is it Anom or Anom? We're going to find out in a second. This is the FBI's 3-year operation and encrypted phone business. Really cool stuff, and I'm very interested about this. Joseph is here to talk about it. Welcome back to the show.
Hey, thank you for having me.
Yeah, it's great to get you back on. Thank you for taking some time with us. So let's, before we get into Anom, first of all, is it Anom or Anom? Anom.
I'm calling it Anom because I think it's based on either anonymity or anonymous. Yeah. So just go with that. Yeah.
All right, we'll go with that. That way I don't have to question it anymore. Talk a bit, but taking a step back a little bit, the encrypted phone business. I mean, this is a thing. I mean, there are, a number of different companies offering encrypted phones. In many ways, these are being targeted directly to criminals. Talk a little bit about that industry in general.
Yeah, sure. So for years, serious organized criminals have been using these sorts of phones. And this isn't, an iPhone or a normal Android or something like that. These have sometimes the GPS removed, the microphone taken out, the camera as well. And they're designed typically just to send encrypted messages to one another. And previously, the FBI and other law enforcement have shut down some of these companies. They did this to Phantom Secure, which I actually believe we spoke about maybe on an earlier episode as well.
Yes, we did.
They've hacked EncroChat, where they deployed malware to the actual end devices. But here, the FBI has taken a pretty unprecedented step and gone further, as in they surreptitiously and secretly ran their own encrypted phone company to then collect the content of messages from their users, deliberately selling it to criminals or people who would then provide it to criminals to basically run a very large-scale encryption honeypot. So rather than having to go to the companies and try to get data from them, they just became the company itself.
Wow. Okay. That's fascinating. It's also not, abnormal for the FBI to set up something elaborate like this, but it's just, this is a 3-year operation. This is not an easy thing to set up from a logistical standpoint, from a technology standpoint, also from just a legitimacy standpoint. Is one thing that I'm unclear on: are these devices or is this a messaging app? Because I saw it reported in both directions. It seems like through your writing, it seems to be that they were marketing devices, but I've seen others report that it was like a messaging service. But maybe that's just a little bit of a lack of clarity. The messaging service is on the device. What is it exactly?
Yeah, it does seem to be quite annoyingly both, as in the primary mode of communication is through this app that's installed on the device itself. But then when the FBI or Anom, secretly being the FBI, sold access to this app, you buy a phone with that. So it's kind of both. And I imagine if you try and talk on a more technical level, you would describe it more as the app, because that's where the encryption is happening. It's not really happening on the operating system of the phone. But if you're a customer, you are buying, probably an Android phone with this app put onto it, which is very similar to a lot of the other companies as well. And I mean, you said this had to be difficult to logistically set up, and that's exactly what the former DOJ official I spoke to said. They essentially not only had to run a good investigation, they had to run a good encrypted phone company and provide customer support and tech support and anything else that any one of these other companies would be doing in the space anyway, because they had to appear legitimate, almost be legitimate in some ways.
Right, and not only legitimate, but credible and trustworthy and all of the things. Is there any indication as far as how they were able to pull that off, how they were able to kind of seed these out? Obviously, these devices had to hit potential targets somehow. Were they giving them out, or were they just really good at marketing with Facebook ads? Or I don't even know.
Right. No. You're right in that. On one side, there is, they just have to be a good company and that sort of thing. But you're right. Yeah. They have to get this in the hands of the people they actually want to target. They don't want to, I would presume, target the mass public, because of course that would be hugely unethical, potentially illegal in a lot of cases. And I think it's fair to say this is already in and of itself something that's surprising, audacious, potentially controversial. We'll see if any legal challenges come up to it. We haven't heard anything from that because obviously it's very, very new. But when it comes to getting it actually in the hands of criminals and get credibility from them, they actually used people who had already sold phones from other companies. So they had sold phones from Phantom. They had sold phones from another company called Sky, which also got shut down by the authorities. And the confidential human source who actually offered Anom to, I nearly said the wrong one, now you've put the two versions in my head, who initially created Anom and offered it to the FBI, they were someone who used to sell Phantom phones. Obviously, they haven't identified them because they're a source, but that's what it says in the court documents. So that person already had a trusted network of people who would want to buy and potentially sell these phones as well, because this entire marketplace is built on trust. I mean, you may ask the question of why are these criminals going to these devices that repeatedly get shut down or get hacked or something like that? And why don't they just go to, use a fully up-to-date iPhone with Signal or whatever it may be? Well, generally speaking, they have a great mistrust of normal companies, in case they work with law enforcement. But when you are being sold you being sold a phone by somebody who's also in the criminal underworld, there's an element of trust there. We're working in the same community, for lack of a better word here.
Yeah, that is fascinating. Yeah, and you mentioned the indictment of 17-ish, I think it's 17 employees of Anom. People, employees, but also influencers. And when I see the word influencers, of course, I automatically think what are these criminal influencers on Instagram or something like that? What was there? When you're talking about influencers, what is the involvement there exactly? Is it just people known within the criminal underbelly and trusted for their recommendation to say, hey, this Anom, service and phone is actually really great when you need to hop on board? How's that work?
Yeah, I mean, the idea of some of these people actually being social media influencers is actually not too far from the truth. There's one of the people in the indictment, the Australian press has already covered quite widely because he's sort of a well-known crime figure, at least in Australia, and he introduced at least some of the devices to criminal associates in the country, and he was dubbed by the media as the Facebook gangster because he's putting all of these posts on social media already. And I believe the indictment does call him an influencer as well for his part in introducing the phones to other people. So these influencers, they carry, reputation, weight currency in the criminal underworld about, well, you can trust this device. But not only that, since the devices only typically talk to phones on the same network, they have to convince entire criminal organizations to make the switch, right? You can't have a Cypher phone talking to a Phantom phone, talking to a Sky phone, because these companies want to maintain their own user base of customers, so they don't allow that cross-pollination. So these influencers, they help in encouraging entire criminal gangs to use these phones. And according to the court records and the various press conferences we've seen over the past few days, 300 distinct criminal groups used these phones that were secretly being run by the FBI. And of course, all of those communications, 27 million messages in total, going to the authorities.
Wow. And that blows me away that it had that much buy-in from a community of people who, I mean, their entire livelihood, I imagine, is built around being incredibly suspicious of anything and everything, because even the slightest bit of scent of a trail means their downfall. Have you encountered anyone in your reporting who may have, kind of been the least bit suspicious of this Anom thing at some point, or was everybody pretty much fooled?
So I spoke to somebody who is a former distributor of Phantom phones in Australia. Just to clarify the timeline, Anom only came after Phantom was closed, so they weren't operating at the same time. But this person sold Phantom phones, and of course they're close to the user base, let's say, of Anom devices, and they didn't seem to have any idea that it was a sting. What they did say was that some people would use a Cypher phone, and then they would also use an Anom phone for different parts of the operation. And it's funny that my source said that, because that's also reflected in the court documents from the DOJ. They said they learned that, yes, maybe these phones can only talk to the phones in the same network, but then the criminals will buy multiple phones to speak to different parts of the operation. So you'll have one for the logistics side, you'll have another network for concealing, the money laundering part where all the cash is involved, because you have to speak to different people. But I haven't seen any indication that people knew this was not a scam, but an undercover operation. There was an anonymous blog post in March which seemed to indicate that, your messages are being sent to the US, which may have some credence to it. My only feeling is that those accusations happen constantly in the encrypted phone industry to every single company. So I don't know if that was necessarily, look, we've caught the FBI. These companies say this stuff all the time. They constantly say that this company is working for the NSA or something. Most of the time it's not true. This one time it actually was the case, though.
And that's all it takes to have to like sprinkle doubt into the entire thing, which is kind of a perfect segue into my last question about this. A major operation like this affects credibility for the entire industry. What do you think something like this does as a result for these other device makers and services that are designed with this in mind? I mean, it very well could be the fact that one of these devices, the company behind it is at least undercover, some sort of something is happening behind the scenes, or maybe they're taken over by the FBI and run for a while by the FBI. I mean, this injects a layer of mistrust into an already difficult to trust industry. So how is that going to affect the industry, do you think?
Totally, and that's exactly what the court records have said, that the goal was to sow this mistrust. The former DOJ official I spoke to who worked on the case, they said that was the goal. I mean, usually when one of these companies shut down, like Phantom, everybody moved to Sky. And then when Sky shut down, a lot of people moved to Anom, and they also probably moved to other providers as well. And then, of course, Anom, as you say, turns out to be this undercover sting operation. It is going to, I think, shatter at least the trust of some people. I don't think the industry is going to evaporate overnight. There is still Cypher, which is very popular in Australia. They declined to comment to me when I asked them, have your user numbers gone up? And they wouldn't tell me, which is within their right. They don't need to comment. But lots of companies often sell, they do buy one, get one free offers when one of their competitors gets shut down, or they do some sort of deal. Haven't really seen much of that, so perhaps they're not super keen to absorb a user base, but we'll see what happens. And it was the goal to at least shatter this trust. We don't know whether people will move to Signal and Wickr and some of the other more legitimate applications that people use. We just have to see what happens now.
fascinating stuff, and you're the perfect person to talk about it. As always, Joseph, I love your work on Vice, so thank you for carving out a few minutes to talk with us today about this story. Anyone who wants to read up on it, I mean, Joseph, you posted a couple of articles on this topic so far, so folks should jump over to vice.com and check out your awesome work. Thank you again, Joseph. We appreciate it.
Thank you so much for having me.
Absolutely. We'll talk with you soon. All right. And that right there is the end of this episode. Not the total end, because we have to actually say goodbye, which we're going to do right now. Tech News Weekly publishes every Thursday at twit.tv/TNW. You can subscribe to audio, video feeds, jump out to YouTube and subscribe there. The world is your oyster. Do what you like.
And we should mention, if you want all of our shows ad-free, you should check out Club Twit. You may have heard about that by now. It's a very awesome way, just $7 a month, to get every Twit show with no ads, access to an exclusive Twit Plus bonus feed with extra content, like perhaps what happened before this show. And the best
I don't know what you're talking about.
The best part, which is access to the members-only Discord server, where you can hang out with fellow Club Twit folks and also us. And we all get to have fun in the Discord server. So we hope to see you there. You just head to twit.tv/clubtwit to learn more and to sign up for $7 a month. By the way, if you want to get in touch with me, I am at Mikah Sargent on many a social media network. So you can check me out there, and stay tuned later today for Smart Tech Today and tomorrow for iOS Today, where Rosemary Orchard and I will be talking about some of the fun new stuff announced at WWDC. Should be a really good show. What about you, Jason?
Right on. Find me at Jason Howell on Twitter. Doing shows here on Twit, of course, all about Android. Had a hands-on tech last week that went up that I think I already talked about. Google Photos onto a NAS, a network attached storage. So many other things. So just twit.tv, you'll find me. Big thanks to John Ashley for commanding the board for this show and publishing it after the fact. Also, big thanks to Burke, who's doing a lot of testing and making sure that everything's technically ready for the show. We couldn't do it without you guys, and we couldn't do it without you watching and listening. So thank you for that. We'll see you next time on Tech News Weekly. Bye, everybody.
Hey, what's going on, everybody? I am Ant Pruitt, and I want to tell you about my show, Hands-On Photography, here on Twit TV. Each and every week, Thursday that is, I like to sit down and share with you the best tips and tricks that are going to help make you a better photographer. And it's not always about Photoshop. It's not always about just having the biggest and baddest and bestest camera. It can be the simplest of things, like leave your eye open when you're looking through the viewfinder. All of these simple tips can really help step your photography game up. So subscribe to the show today. That's twit.tv/hop. And I look forward to talking to you soon.